Hello. Okay, so section 2 on menstruation. And now I'm going to talk about ancestral trauma. So there's a kind of a buzz going around, I think, in the spiritual communities, or spirituality is becoming somewhat of a fad, which is totally cool. We need it at this day and age. But what does it really mean when you say ancestral trauma? So as women, it's important to know that we were all in our grandmother's wombs. So what that means is when we're fetuses, as women, when you're fetuses, you develop in utero with your ovaries and your eggs in your ovaries. So we were literally fetuses in our mother. Our mother was a fetus and we were eggs in our mother as a fetus while she was living inside of our grandmother. So there's this exponential movement backwards in the generations. And we can call that genetics, we can call it ancestral memory. It's really all the same. We are living with whatever our grandmothers went through, and then whatever their histories were from being in their mothers when their mothers were fetuses who were in their grandmother's wombs, etc. Back. So ancestral trauma is actually quite literal. It means that we carry in our blood, in our bones, in our DNA, the different chemical levels that happen during fight or flight. It depends on what our parents went through. It is seen time and time again, especially through midwives who are more spiritual and in the ceremony circles, that everything that happens to us during gestation, everything that happens to our parents before their lives, like what did conception look like, all of these things have to do with how we present on an everyday level, on an everyday basis. As far as that is connected to our wombs, we have to look at the history of our mothers, the history of our grandmothers, the history of their lineages. Their lineages carry the air, if you will, of the times. So who are you from? Did your ancestors suffer slavery? Did your ancestors suffer refugeeism? Did they have to leave their homeland? Were your ancestors raped? I know personal stories about people whose mothers and grandmothers were literally raped, and that's how they came into existence. And when you understand these things, a lot of other things start clicking and making sense. If your womanhood, just because you're a woman and you were raised in a way, in a culture, in a time where you were automatically a target for sexual violation as soon as you became a woman, what kind of fear is going to be instilled in you? If you have ancestors or your mother had birth trauma or died in childbirth, what kinds of is that going to hold inside of your woman parts? There are a lot of traumas or of blockages that happen in our bodies because of things that we don't even realize. Our unconscious is playing out something in our body. I recently had healing work done by Banketsani in Digimama. I encourage everyone to check her out. Her specialty is womb work. She also sets bones. She's just a badass in all kinds of ways. But I got work done by her, and all of this stuff came out about witnessing certain things when I was a child, and it wasn't even my own personal sexual trauma. It's just watching women be hurt. Or I've also had body talk by a woman named Elza, who's a really great body talk practitioner, and there was this belief system where my T cells of my thymus were overproducing, and in this protection way, like F you man, because I have that underlying belief system that it's not safe to be around men because of things I saw growing up. So it might not even be your own personal trauma, just witnessing trauma or understanding trauma. I've had different messages come through, and there are women who really celebrated when their husbands died, because they were trapped. And so their womanhood represents their trapping. Okay, so there are these little itty-bitty things that are huge when it comes to understanding our own pathology. You didn't even realize that you couldn't get pregnant because of your belief systems. Right? Because you fear that your daughter is going to end up somebody's maid or somebody's rape victim, etc. So these are the kinds of things we need to uncover, like know your history, know where your family came from. in America, all the history of conquest and colonization and rape, a lot of us are direct descendants of rape because of the way the warring happened. Indigenous peoples were like running and warring, and settlers running and warring, and then all of a sudden you have a mixed blood like me, and I'm like, oh my God, I hate myself because I'm a perpetrator and I'm a victim and all of these other things. And how are we re-perpetuating that in our bodies? And when we make peace with who we are and where we come from and understand how that is implicated in the symptoms we're having, that is when we are actually able to heal. But we first have to understand what's going on. We have to be aware of why these things are happening in our bodies. And everyone is affected by it. So even if you're not a person of color in the United States of America, in the last 500 years that got pillaged and raped and pushed out and displaced and all of these things. Also displacement, root chakra stuff, it's going to affect your womb. If you're a white person, the reasons why white pilgrims came to the United States of America is for religious freedom, and there's still the witch trials and the Salem witch hunts. And before that, in old Europe, there were, the healers of old Europe, the medicine people, were burnt at the stake, and the men had to watch their mothers and sisters be burnt. And that exists in their trauma when they're, giving their seed, even though men create their seeds at the time of ejaculation, as opposed to carrying it with them through their whole life. That still is an imprint. So when were you conceived? When was your grandmother conceived? Was it war? There are all different kinds of ways we come into the world, and all of those imprints exist in us. So what that means menstruation-wise, is there fear in your womb? Is there anger in your womb? Is there like a belief system that's keeping you from having a healthy woman time because in your experience, women are consistently put asunder, tortured, hurt, etc. Okay, so ancestral trauma, this is the second video on menstruation, and then the next one we're going to talk about sexual trauma, and then after that we're going to go into some more practical things. So thank you for tuning in. Please feel free to comment, question, tag your friends, subscribe. This is all about our communal healing, because when we heal ourselves, we heal the world, and when we are sharing our healing, we are healing, and that's awesome.